Was the
Hey, everybody. It is Thursday. It is 11 a.m. Eastern here on the East Coast. I'm Julie Roginski here with Olga Lautman and Olga Lautman's birds in the background. Is that your bird?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a zoo.
Yeah, no problem. I also have a zoo with two dogs. So, Olga, you and I did an emergency live 2 days ago about NATO basically sending a message to Russia by having land exercises, sea exercises, air exercises. I'm not sure there were exercises. I don't know what exactly was going on over there, but there was a huge showing of NATO strength, including the United States Air Force, I have to admit, in the North Sea and the Baltic and around Kaliningrad, which is a Russian exclave that used to belong to Germany, used to be called Königsberg, then in 1945 became part of the Soviet Union and got changed to Kaliningrad. That has continued in the days since you and I spoke in the last 2 days. And the whole thing has gotten virtually no coverage from the mainstream press, but this is insane because we're seeing a massive show of NATO strength around Russian assets. At the same time, I might add that Trump has done Putin the biggest favor of all time, which is rewarding his now, I would say, top ally, Kim Jong-un, by saying that he's going to diminish joint Korean-U.S. exercises and signaling that he's basically going to pull American troops out of South Korea, which would be, whatever fantasies Kim Jong-un has. I think this one is so fantastical that he could never even imagine this luck. That happened, just so you know, in the same day. I don't know if people realize that, or within 24 hours of Putin saying to Kim Jong-un that they will basically create a whole new world order together. And then the day after what Trump said, after this whole military exercises thing, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, said to his counterpart in Korea that they will effectively the same thing, that they're in North Korea, that they're going to have a whole new world order together and a friendship and so on and so forth. Not a coincidence. And then the next day, NATO started doing what they were doing in around Kaliningrad. What do you make of all this, Olga?
Look, they are definitely picking something up because I've been monitoring it, and since June. So let's rewind. Since I would say 2024, you have European intelligence agencies, including American, that have been warning that Russia may attack Europe, NATO country. But they had it somewhere 2028, 2029, 2030. I mean, I remember there was, I think the spring of 2024. I mean, there was such a chorus of warnings coming out, and that's it. What we're seeing now is different. Starting the end of June, going through all of July and into August, we have seen the United States issue 2 warnings. One warning that there could be a potential ground incursion into Poland, that Russia could use captured Ukrainian drones to hit critical infrastructure. And they have a whole host of scenarios. We had the Lithuanians come out with the warnings. We literally have several agencies coming out with warnings. Now, these warnings are about now. Like not 2028, not 2029, about Russia potentially doing something in fall within the next few months. At the same time, there have been a lot of reports. We covered some of it the other day during our emergency with the ships that are sailing through the Baltics, the Russian ships, one capable of carrying ballistic missiles, the Zircon ballistic missiles. We had another ship sail through, and at the same time, which we'll get into, there's a new report that Russia is building facilities on the Russian side close enough to strike NATO with long-range drones. There are 10 locations that the Telegraph journalist identified. And the worrying thing is these aren't temporary. Like these aren't just like throwing facilities up to go after Ukraine or making makeshift hospitals like Russia did that can be quickly put up and taken down. These are permanent structures. So whatever Europe is seeing, whatever NATO is seeing, clearly it's enough for them to scramble. And we're not even discussing the fact that we had a missile land in Poland a few weeks ago, a Russian missile land in Moldova this week, drone incursions continuing, particularly we'll get into that in Romania, and it's just nonstop. So we're not even talking about the shadow war that Russia is playing, and carrying out where they have plausible deniability. Here, they're actually worried about an actual military attack. So whatever they are seeing clearly is enough for them to take out literally the best weapons that NATO has, the US has. I mean, they even brought out on the first night of this operation, on the first day, on Tuesday, the day we had live, a US plane that literally just entered the theater in like 2024. So it's a brand new, the most sophisticated advanced US plane available. The day we had the live, everything was circling around Kaliningrad, and that's where the main focus was. Yesterday, again, with no answers, nothing besides a vague statement from US military and NATO that they're just, doing whatever, their normal defensive whatever. They continue the exercises and they move towards Moldova. So yesterday you had the French covering the whole region by Moldova. You had the Germans and the Americans doing flights back and forth by the Belarusian and Russian border, again, circling around Kaliningrad. And today, day 3 of these bizarre exercises, and we still don't know what is happening.
Well, I want to just to put this in context, because I think most people don't have a map of the region in their heads. Maybe you do, but for people who don't, Moldova used to be part of the Soviet Union. There was an election in Moldova several months ago where the Russians played very, very, very hard to try to take over that government and make it another proxy like Belarus is. They lost. The Russians have a tremendous amount of sabotage that they do in Moldova all the time because of where Moldova, it's Transnistria, because of where it's geographically located. Despite its very small size, it's actually a very important part of the world for them, adjacent to NATO countries. Moldova itself is not a NATO member. Belarus, of course, if they're circling, is located on the border of Ukraine and Russia and Poland. Belarus, at one point, sometimes was part of Poland, sometimes was part of Russia, went back and forth. So what you're talking about here is, I think, Olga, if I had to guess, and we don't know exactly what led to this show of strength, but I've always thought that Putin's ultimate calculus was, well, if I attack one of the Baltics, like if I attack Lithuania, right, which is also very close to Belarus. And Belarus, for the intents and purposes of this discussion, is basically part of Russia. It's not, it's its own sovereign country, but it's, it is Putin's.
Yeah, it's annexed.
It's basically annexed. So you have a situation where I think Trump, sorry, Freudian slip. Putin has made a calculus, which is, okay, if I attack hypothetically Lithuania, which is a member of NATO, and try to bring it back into the fold, is the United States really going to go to war on behalf of Lithuania, which most Americans don't even know exists? Like, it means nothing to the United States. It is a country that is on the edge of NATO. It used to be part of the Soviet Union. Like, really, he's testing the United States. I think that whatever NATO saw was concerning enough to them, whether it's Poland, which I think would be a bigger problem than Lithuania for NATO, just it's a bit, for a variety of reasons. But what they saw was so troubling that I think they wanted to send a message to Putin of, don't try. We know you're about to. And before we have to actually declare war on you, for trying to go after one of our members, we are going to send a message to you that you better not attempt it. I can't imagine what else this can be for this.
Yes, 100%.
For this kind of force, which is scary because it begs the question of what exactly was Putin trying? Like, was he trying to go after a NATO? Like, was he seriously on the cusp of incursion into a NATO country? Not in the way that he's been. And by the way, he's been doing these incursions repeatedly. NATO's been turning a blind eye repeatedly. There are drones that have exploded in Germany. I mean, we're not even talking about former Soviet states. In Germany, the largest country in Europe, in Western Europe, Poland has had drone incursions repeatedly over and over. A lot of these NATO countries have had incursions over and over and over. And Olga, the United States and the rest of NATO are like, we're going to take Russia at its word that this was unintentional. Well, obviously, Putin was doing that as a test. And something was coming up here that showed them that he was going to start actually doing, like, moving. Was he going to move troops into Lithuania? Easy to do because of Belarus's complicity. Was he going to move troops into Poland? Not hard to do because of Belarus's complicity. We don't know. But if he does, and NATO does what it's supposed to do, we've been saying that we're in World War III for a long time. This would be the September 1st, 1939 version, because that would literally force NATO to declare war as part of Article 5. Whether Trump is ever going to do that is a different story.
Well, it's not even up to Trump anymore because, right now, Europe has to defend its territory. And whether the U.S. is part, first of all, I love America. I love our military. But at this moment, I mean, we see what Trump has done and how he has shown weaknesses, which also contributes to this. By attacking Iran and literally being stuck there. I mean, this is the most shameful thing. Yeah. I mean, just for that, I would, impeach Trump to put America into a situation where he literally has the Iranians threatening America that if we don't comply, that they will cause the greatest economic consequences that we have ever seen. I mean, the fact that we have Iran threatening America is completely absurd. I mean, they've done it for decades.
And successfully so. Not just threatening, but making good on the threats.
Exactly. And they've done so for decades, but here in a direct confrontation, I mean, you don't start things unless you know you could win it. And in this case, he went in without a plan and whatnot. And this exposed to everyone. I mean, if I were the South Koreans, or the Japanese, I would be panicking. I would be like, wait a minute, this is America, protecting us. The Gulf states are getting slammed. I mean, right now it's quiet for the past few weeks, but the Gulf states are being slammed, all their critical infrastructure and whatnot. And, the American bases there were being destroyed. I mean, what Trump has done is unbelievable. It's horrific, that he was even allowed to get this far and that this country doesn't have a better system of controlling one man, from destroying the country. But that's for another show. But Europe has no choice. Europe needs to, protect its territory. So whether it be with NATO, right now it's interesting that U.S. troops and the military is participating. But if Trump says, you know what, nope, we don't want to be involved, they still have to act. I mean, if there are tanks or drones or troops or anything rolling over territory of a NATO country, Europe has to act, whether U.S. is there or not there, whatever it is. And it's funny that you mentioned Lithuania, because prior to the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2021 in the summer, and I have, the horrific task of monitoring Russian state media, they literally had a segment of for fun. Imagine this was like American TV and for fun, like you have a segment like on a talk show of them having a military, a map and military like analysts of how quick they would take Lithuania and
Oh, they
how
have
the
that at Fox.
Russians.
They have that at Fox all the time about Greenland and everything else. So I hate to
Oh,
say it,
they do.
but we're
Oh,
melting
Jesus.
all the time.
Oh,
We're melting.
oh,
We're melding into them.
oh no.
Yeah.
But they had this, and they would split Lithuania with the Chinese. That was what the Russians were saying. But anyway, there's a threat also to Estonia. I wrote an article late spring of little green men running around the border because there's a thin, like a border between Russian. Estonia, there's like a little piece of land, and they were like unidentified, literally little green men, the same ones that invaded Ukraine in 2014, um, which are Russian military, special military units. So I mean, they have been probing. And, again, the threat could be anywhere. Moldova is another interesting case because Moldova is next. That I could tell you just from the Russian mentality, because I, was talking to someone Russian who was so excited and hyped up about the fact that, oh, we're going to have Ukraine back and whatever. This was a few years ago. And they're like, oh, after Ukraine, we're going to take Moldova back. Now, just a reminder that Russia has been occupying Moldova, again, this is under Yeltsin, occupying Transnistria for decades. This is another part that needs to be freed. So you have Russia occupying Georgia, you have Russia occupying Moldova, and you have Russia occupying Ukraine. And then with Moldova, another interesting thing is that Russia was laying the groundwork for Moldova a few years ago, basically saying that Sandu is a Nazi. Same exact propaganda for Ukraine prior to the invasion, saying she's a Nazi, and that it's a threat to Russia and Russia's interests and a threat to.
She's the leader of Moldova, for people who don't know. But go ahead.
And same thing, and then they were setting off terrorist attacks in Transnistria. Also, I had written an article right before election that Russia took, which is interesting. New York Times caught up with it like a year later. But I wrote that Wagner was taking Moldovans to train in Serbia to set off like incendiary devices and to have violent protests to send them back into Moldova. So when Russia needs to pressure Moldova, they can basically orchestrate these protests and turn them very violent very quick.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, again, as I said, Moldova is it borders Romania. It's very close to Bucharest, the capital of Romania. Of course, it's almost fully surrounded to the east by Ukraine, and so what we're talking, and it's also not too far from key Ukrainian sites that the Russians have been trying to take, like Odessa, and it's right across the Black Sea from the Crimean Peninsula and from Sevastopol. So I want to just put that in context to say it's a tiny little country. I think it was the smallest of the Soviet republics, but it's so critical geographically to everything that the Russians are trying to accomplish, both in Ukraine and outside Ukraine. Look, I think the difficulty that we find ourselves in here is that the Russians have created, and this is why this Trump war with Iran, everybody's like, oh, Netanyahu talked him into it, and Netanyahu did talk him into it, but how much it benefits Putin, because the Russians, the Ukrainians are working and have worked hand in glove for many years now. Iranians. Iran is the reason that Russia was even competitive in Ukraine, and still is, because of their Shahed drones, because they had technology that the Russians were literally begging the Iranians to give them. Now, Iran has effectively shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Well, Europe imports about, I think, 97% of its oil from elsewhere. It has to go through the Strait of Hormuz, right? If they start bombing the Suez Canal, the other way it can go, and the Red Sea, the other way it can go, you're basically
What
shutting
they
down,
have.
which
The
they have. But
Houthis
I mean,
have.
if they shut it down, which is not hard to, friends, not hard to do, not hard to do. If they shut it down and make it impossible for ships to risk transiting, they only need to bomb one or two. They don't need to actually mine the place. You just need to make it clear that, hey, you go through here, we're going to, throw a hostage on the tarmac. They're very good at doing that, as we've seen, to say that this is not safe for you to transit. It will stop global shipping in the Middle East. And at that point, there's so much pressure on Europe in advance of really key elections that are happening in Germany, that are going to happen next year in France, or in a couple of years in France, that can happen in Britain at any moment because their governments fall every 5 minutes. You're talking about putting so much pressure on Europe that governments in Europe will start to fall. And then you have people like Marine Le Pen and others who are so pro-Russian, the AfD in Germany, because of economic strife that the Russians will cause with the Iranians, rise up, in which case NATO becomes completely obsolete. That's what we're dealing with here. We're not dealing with Winston Churchill. We're not. We're dealing with countries that are on the cusp of electing people like Farage in Britain, a Russian asset. People like Marine Le Pen, who literally took money from Putin. I mean, it's adjudicated to have taken money from Putin. This is not theory. This was in a French court. And she's still now allowed to run. The French court ruled that despite all that, she's allowed to run. She might, enough economic hardship in France, she might win. Enough economic hardship in Britain, Farage might win. Enough economic hardship in Germany, and the AfD will win, right? Far right wing, completely infiltrated by Russia. And now you're talking about the three most prominent members of NATO effectively being governed by people who are, if not Russian assets, then Russia's useful idiots. We already have one in the White House. Think of what Russia will be able to accomplish thanks to Trump's little adventurism in Iran.
That is spreading. I turned away because I've been so busy monitoring what's happening in NATO the past few days that yesterday I look and I'm like, whoa, now Turkey and Israel are about to go to war? What is going on? Apparently Israel struck Turkey positions in Syria, and Turkey started moving military into Syria. Then Israel started threatening Turkey, and I'm like, dear goodness, this is Trump really set off, the volatility. Not to even mention, you talk about, the Red Sea. The Houthis have effectively, started shutting down that strait. Any Saudi ship that attempts to go through, they bomb it. And now the Houthis are in again, falling into the cycle of a civil war with the Yemeni armed forces, which are backed by the Saudis. So you see that amplifying. And I mean, I haven't seen attacks inside of Yemen, as far as, in Sana'a, for quite a while, until the past few weeks that we see the Houthis now escalating inside of Yemen and against the Saudis. And then the Saudis struck airplanes that were landing inside of the Sana'a International Airport, that were Iranian things that were being delivered. So, I mean, literally, the whole region is going on fire. You have the same thing happening with, between North Korea, South Korea, Japan. So Trump literally, I mean, when people don't, this is what gets me mad. We have such a powerful, exceptional country. And people here do not realize it. And I understand everybody, domestically has their own economic things they have to worry about. And I mean, this is exactly, it. But when you have this isolationist movement that America needs to pull out, people don't understand how America is the linchpin that basically holds everything together around the world. And we are now seeing Trump's movements and what is happening. And this is just the beginning. I mean, we haven't even gotten to the point if China and Russia are coordinating that China will invade Taiwan while Russia attacks a NATO country. We haven't gotten to the point of, with U.S. troops if they get pulled out of South Korea and Japan, then North Korea makes a move in a war that has never ended. I mean, South Korea and North Korea.
Yeah, it's an armistice. That's all there is.
Yeah.
And I will say this, Olga, we talked about this the other day. I went to South Korea in April, and I went up to the DMZ. And I will tell you, you stand there at the DMZ, and sadly, they won't allow you to take pictures, but you stand there at the DMZ and you look over into North Korea. And it is, first of all, it is 30 miles, I want to say, from Seoul. Like, people don't realize how close the militarized zone is. Second, it is the most fortified military border in the world. It is mined. There are God knows how many troops on both sides pointing guns at each other. It is terrifying. But the thing that I think is so important to know is you go to the DMZ and there's a statue of Harry Truman, and there is a memorial with Korean flags and American flags thanking the United States. And then you realize that when you go into the subway, into the metro in Seoul, they have gas masks. And you talk to normal people in Korea, and they anticipate that they're going to get attacked. Like, they're living under constant stress of attack. It's very similar to the mindset to Israel, right? Where you're constantly thinking in the back of your mind, when are these people going to pour over the border? And this is a country that is culturally lapping everybody right now, right? K-pop and movies and TV shows. You know, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, because my son just connected his AirPods to my computer.
Oh.
So the reason I say this is like what Trump just did. And then, by the way, when you go to the DMZ, you see a tremendous amount of Korean troops just going to the memorial, and you see American troops. Like, that's the part that I think is fascinating. You see them, and we're working hand in glove. This is the one country, one out of the very few right now, that actually understands very practically what we're doing for them. And watching all this is, of course, China, because it's only a matter of time with Taiwan. And Japan, which has basically lived under umbrella security, that now is refortifying its military because of what we're doing. One man, Donald Trump, has accomplished more to benefit every single autocrat in the world. Like, if he were programmed by a computer, he could not be doing more to help people like Putin and Xi Jinping. It is just insane what he is doing. And for people in the chat who said Germany doesn't have any elections until 2029, well, you've got regional elections, friends.
No, they have. Yeah, they have.
Yeah, there's regional elections.
I know interfering. In German and French upcoming elections.
And I mean, like, you go to France. France has been on the cusp of Marine Le Pen for a really long time. A really long time. She's leading in the polls now. And I know there's a couple years left, but I mean, you know, she's been around a long time, and she keeps trying and trying and trying and trying. Like the barbarian at the gate, she's gonna get in eventually. And Britain is in such a mess. Their government, you know, it's not a joke about the head of lettuce. I mean, the government's collapsed over and over and over again. It's hard to remember who the prime minister is at any given day. Eventually, people are going to say, you know what? We want to try something different. Really different. Not the Tories and not Labor. We want to try something really different. I mean, think about who that's very different is. Nigel Farage, the Russian asset? The guy who literally practically takes, I don't know, practically, I think he does take orders from the Kremlin. I mean, it's crazy. Crazy. I mean, they did Brexit. What could have helped Moscow more?
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, somebody said he should get the Nobel War Prize. He should get the Nobel War for what he did. And this Iran adventure.
Oh my God, this is a nightmare. I mean, this actually will chase him out of the White House, because they're not going to let him go. I don't see Iran stepping away. They will be like the poltergeist tormenting him until his last days, because every time he thinks, you know, that there's some kind of like calm, they're going to throw a mine or a drone or something to set things off again and to mess with U.S. economy around key points and whatnot. But yesterday, with all of this happening yesterday, I text you how insane it was, but then I got caught up with something. So this, I mean, literally, we're looking at Europe, chaos. We're looking in the Middle East, beyond chaos. We're looking into Asia, chaos. Everywhere, chaos. I turn on CNN. I kid you not. I thought this was like, I mean, really, I don't know who is simulating us and what timeline we fell into, this unfortunate, horrific timeline. But I turned on CNN and they're playing a thing from Trump talking and the thing. With everything happening, the world is on fire. This lunatic is sitting, oh, and I put new topsoil on the grass. You know, grass are like humans. They love topsoil, and now they're going to be so happy. And then he talks about granite on the driveway. And I'm like, you are kidding me. Like, he literally threw a match to the world and they're sitting there in la da da land, you know, like, oh, look at the grass. You know, grass is humans. He doesn't care about real humans, but apparently the grass is happy because it has new, fresh topsoil, so it's going to flourish. I was like, this is unbelievable. Like, what timeline are we in? Between that and that Natalie Harp being in an SUV trunk in order to get to a court hearing.
I remember living in working in Washington in the summer. Well, I was longer than that, but I was working in the Senate in 2001, excuse me. And that summer, all anybody could talk about was the disappearance of a young staffer who was having an affair with a congressman. Remember that whole situation? What was her name? People in the chat help me out. Oh God, let me look this up. Gary Condit and Chandra Levy. Remember Chandra Levy? She was.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And all anybody talking, it was wall to wall. Chandra Levy, Chandra Levy, Chandra Levy. Everything was about Chandra Levy. Where did she go? Was she having an affair with Gary Condit, the congressman? Did he kill her? Was he part of the disappearance? What was going on with her? You know, yet another young woman that the media was totally fixated on. And then 9/11 happened. And I often think back to that summer about what Congress was focused on. And I mean, yes, they were passing bills and legislation, but the underlying thing in the media everywhere else was Chandra Levy. And people, you know, would see Gary Condit walking through the halls. They'd be like, oh, there's, you know, Gary Condit. I feel very much that we're living in the same timeline now, where everybody's focused on stupid Natalie Harp, who, by the way, I've said this before, I wrote a Substack about this. Who cares if she's having an affair with Trump? It's worse than that. She truly believes that he rose her up from the dead. She has put out memes of him looking like Jesus. When she was a reporter, I use that word loosely, when she was an anchor at OANN, she used to replace the scripture she would end her shows with sometimes what Trump said instead of scripture. I mean, she truly thinks of him as divine. So it is psychotic, and I only wish that all they were doing was having an affair, because that's understandable. This is insane. She's literally feeding into his notion that he is Jesus Christ. But whatever. That goes to Trump's mentality and goes to his psychosis. Everybody's focused on Natalie Harp, while over here, the media is not focused at all on what we are talking about, which is that there is a fucking NATO operation happening in ways that it hasn't happened in modern history on the border of Russia. Like, what are we talking about here? Who gives a shit if Natalie Harp is having an affair with Donald Trump? God bless. Go do what you need to do there.
Keep them occupied for the next few years, please.
Like whatever. What I care about is not that. What I care about is that we are on the cusp of World War III. And to me, this is the timeline. It is August. It is just like right before 9/11. It is the exact same thing, where you had all of these bin Laden determined to attack the United States. That memo comes out. Everybody ignores it. Well, the press didn't know about it, but the administration ignores it. And everybody's focused on some young woman and her, the scandal around, did they have an affair? Did they not have an affair? What was going on? And meanwhile, next thing you know, the World Trade Center comes down and the Pentagon is attacked and a plane goes down in a field in Pennsylvania. Like, I don't want to scare people, but the parallels are so striking. What's the phrase? Like, sometimes history, rhymes. It doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. This isn't even rhyming. This is literally repeating itself.
On steroids.
On steroids. And friends, unlike 2001, we actually have an internet where we are able to we had internet back then too, but not like this, where we are better able to track what is happening. And what we're telling you right now is there is
in real time.
Yes, there is a concerning, terrifying event happening all around Russia, in the exclave of Kaliningrad, which is truly like might as well be in Western Europe, around Poland, the biggest of the Russian satellite countries back in the day, or the most important, one of them, in Moldova, a former Soviet republic that the Russians are
Belarus,
in Belarus,
where Russia moved nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Not only troops, if it was only troops, but they moved nuclear weapons to Belarus a few years ago. So
yep. And I will tell you, you're talking about Estonia. Mm-hmm. That is like an 1.5-hour ferry ride from Helsinki, from Finland. Like it is, Estonia is like that. You can get to Finland from Estonia.
And Finland, Russia has been over the past few years also creating bases across from Finland. And Finland has been fortifying their border because they are also worried and see signs that Russia can make a move there. So, I mean, right now the whole concentration is on Kaliningrad and the Baltics, but we still have, it could be Finland, there could be Romania, Russia could be signaling that it's coming from here, look over here, whereas they can do a surprise move in Romania or into Finland or any other NATO country. So, I mean, you know, this is definitely problematic. And we really need to get into the plan because NATO clearly wants Russia to know that they're not going to sit back with this. And with that, they used a German newspaper, Bild, to basically release a 3-point plan of should Russia invade a NATO country, what they would do. And the fact that that plan came out in itself is, you know, they're trying to make it serve as a deterrent to let Russia know that, listen, if you cross this line and invade one of our countries, this is what we will do to you. And this plan is incredible. I mean, it goes into phase 1 if Russian, because they're preparing, like with Ukraine, that phase 1 would be missile and drone attacks, followed by ground forces, which is what Russia did in Ukraine. They first off in the field with drone and missile attacks. Then they had the tanks and forces cross over. So here NATO is preparing the same thing, that it would be the same playbook where Russia would launch a barrage of ballistic missiles and drones. And now imagine, this is like NATO putting out this plan, you know, in 2026, like of a potential laying out the groundwork of how a Russian invasion would play out and what they would do to respond. I mean, it is, you know, I deal with this, you deal with this. So for us, it's like, okay, like talking. But if you pull back, this is so insane. We are in 2026. The fact that Europe, you know, one, hasn't responded properly and assisted Ukraine properly to end this, because Ukraine, had they had the weapons, could have finished this off, you know, quite a while ago. And instead of having a dozen or so people die every single day from missile attacks, that, by the way, thanks to Trump's Iran war, that's another casualty, Ukrainians, because they don't have patriots, because Trump shot 1,500 plus off by Iran to try to knock down $20,000-$30,000 drones. But the plan is phase 1 that they're anticipating the missile and drone attack, followed by ground forces, what they would do then. Then the fact of creating an autonomous zone where they wouldn't station NATO troops, but that they can use the zone as a buffer zone to try to push the Russians back. If the Russians go even further, they will launch strikes, and this is what the plan says. They will launch strikes inside of Russia against railways and infrastructure and anything that is supporting their missile attacks into Europe. So the fact that they so explicitly laid out what their response would be, shows again, this came at the same time of this whatever operation happening around Kaliningrad and now moving off to Moldova. So the fact that they, simultaneously released this plan and are carrying out day 3 of these operations shows you again that there is something. I mean, it's not that they were just worried about Russia putting a bomb on a drone in the German airport or Russia blowing up, a railway. That they're actually worried about actual war on NATO territory.
Well, I got to tell you, we are dealing with a really precarious time, friends, and I don't want to belabor this, and I don't want to frighten anybody, and other than to say that it is unconscionable, and I seriously mean this as somebody who spends a tremendous amount of time on cable news, it is unconscionable that CNN is not talking about this, that MS, I mean, Fox, whatever, but it is unconscionable that the New York Times doesn't have this on their front page. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, seriously, what are we talking about here? I mean, like, the biggest thing at CNN this week is Scott Jennings auditioning to replace Caroline Leavitt by defending Trump and Natalie Harp. Like, friends, who cares? I mean, truly, who cares if about Natalie Harp? I mean, it doesn't matter in the large scheme of things. You could talk about it as a segment, but wall-to-wall Natalie Harp coverage, when we're talking about the fact that there are troops amassing, and not amassing, that they're doing exercises.
And American troops.
American troops. When nobody's connecting the dots, which I guess I'm going to have to write a Substack about because this is something that the New York Times should be doing, but nobody's connecting the dots. And you have connected the dots better than anybody on this, between what is happening in Iran and how much that will impact European elections going forward. Not just this year, not just next year, but somebody talking about Germany 2029. You think we are not, I mean, you have natural gas and oil fields and production that have been disrupted for years in the UAE. This is going to impact European energy prices for years. Wait till winter and how much it's going to cost to heat your house in Europe this winter and next winter and the winter after that and in 2029. And just in time for the elections, just in time for the French elections, just in time for the German elections, and the British elections can take place, 5 minutes from now, with where the government can collapse again. So
same could be said here too, though, because I tell you, I got my electric bill literally $854 for last month, electric. And I mean, this has been the trend in New York. I don't know if I'm sure you have Con Edison, but this has been the trend in New York between National Grid and Con Edison. Our prices are skyrocketing, and clearly it's not only for us, it's the whole country. So at the same time, whatever Russia's doing there, and it's going to impact Europe, at the same time we're having the same impact here because everyone is feeling everything, these astronomical prices.
And yes, and listen, the canary in the coal mine. Do you know that last year you had 2 gubernatorial elections, one in Virginia, one in New Jersey? I live in the New Jersey media market. I live in New York, so I know much more about New Jersey than I do about Virginia. The number one issue that Mikey Sherrill, who's now the governor of New Jersey, ran on was energy prices, bringing down the cost of energy prices. That is her. Like, if there's anything that you knew about her campaign as a layperson, it was that she promised to bring down energy prices. That means her polling showed that this was the number one issue that people cared about. And
it used to be a studio apartment used to cost $850.
Yeah,
I'm old enough to remember that in Brooklyn you could get a studio for $850, and now that's a month of electric.
I mean, electric. I have a house out in Pennsylvania. Do you know what I pay to heat it every winter? I mean, truly, it's insane because I have an oil tank. It is insane. It is crazy. It cost me over $1,000 a month to heat this house, and I don't even live there. Like, it's crazy. So I don't even use I don't even turn up the heat most of the time. So it's insane. It's insane. And that's before the Iran war. That was last winter. I can only imagine what this winter is going to look like. And what I'm telling you right now is that we have a situation that we are about to have Europe go through a massive economic crisis because of what Trump did in Iran. At the same time, the Trump has pointed out, the Pete Hegseth said to Europe that he's going to draw down troops from Europe. At the same time that J.D. Vance lectures Europe about how much they suck. At the same time that Trump takes digs at NATO all the time. And at the same time as there are elections that are coming online in major European countries. Friends, do I need to connect the dots for you? Who benefits? Who benefits? I mean, think about who benefits. And if you wanted to put a president in the White House who was going to benefit you, is there one that could be doing any more than Trump is doing right now? Not a one. Not a one. Now, it is fascinating to me that the United States is actually participating in these NATO exercises. I don't know if that's for show or what our air strength is versus anybody else's. I don't know why. But everything aside from that points to the fact that they
don't tell them.
No. I know.
No, I'm saying maybe it didn't get to Hegseth. Maybe he's too busy campaigning in Iowa or Ohio, whatever it is. He didn't realize what's happening.
I don't know. I assume it did get to Hegseth, but it's only day 3, right? Like, what's going to happen day 14? And how long is this going to go on for? And the longer this goes on, the more mysterious this becomes. On that note,
two more things. I wanted another thing we need to keep an eye on. This needs to be on our radar. Again, tied to this. Last month, Russia, 3 nights in a row, launched drones into Romania. And Romanians were extremely
on the border of Moldova. I just want people.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And Romanians were extremely proud because I think, NATO has watched these drones come in and missiles come in and just stare at them. But here, finally, I think NATO is changing its posture, and Romanians lifted their Air Force and shot down these drones for 3 nights.
Okay.
Then last week or maybe earlier this week, Spain was doing a patrol, part of their NATO contribution. A drone came in and Spain shot down a drone in Romania. Now, overnight, there was another drone by, they have it's called the Neptune gas project. And there was a naval drone that was near that. And again, I believe Spain and Romania shot this down. Bottom line, that we need to also keep an eye on Romania because Russia's clearly testing the borders between Poland and Romania. They keep testing, with these drone incursions, missile incursions, and the fact that, again, these drones are appearing near critical infrastructure. I mean, this gas project is a big deal. I mean, it has enough, NATO worried enough. This is the second time that a Russian drone appeared near there. So that's something else to keep an eye on. On a good note, just to end, so it's not all doom and gloom, Russia soon may not be able to afford to pay all its proxies across Europe and US and across, frankly, the whole world, because it's not a run on banks yet. But with all the instability and chaos happening now inside of Russia because of all these drone strikes on infrastructure from Ukraine, Russians have taken to the banks. Last month, they withdrew half a trillion rubles out of banks. And this is hitting not only the small banks that might not survive, but also all the major banks. And this year, already in the first 2 weeks, they've withdrawn around over 200 plus billion rubles. So something also to keep an eye on, because we all know the chaos that will cause if, banks start running out of money. And
I do have to say that Russians put up with a lot until they don't put up with anything anymore. And you saw that in 1905, and you saw that in 1917, and you saw that in 1991. So I think Putin understands he's racing against time.
And that's why he's doing this.
And that's why he's doing what he's doing. And frankly, Trump would not mind a little military excursion to get our minds off of stuff. Friends, I understand it's very important that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are moving back to the UK. I got a breaking news alert from the New York Times on that. I've never gotten a breaking news alert about what's happening here. So I just want to say I love good royal gossip as much as the next girl. I want to find out what happened to Hayden Panettiere as much as the next girl. It's all good. I get it. I'm not pretending that we have to be all gloom and doom all the time. Nobody loves a good royal gossip as much as I do, but there is real stuff happening right now. And much like the Duke and Duchess of Windsor getting married in the 1930s in the lead up to the big war in 1939 consumed British public opinion, I'm telling you, don't get distracted. There is stuff happening in addition to all of this. Olga.
And I'm telling you, you must have a past life in the 1930s because you are so focused as if you lived that decade or decade.
Well, did I ever tell you my recurring Auschwitz dream?
Oh,
well, no. I don't want to tell you now because I know you have to go, but I have a crazy past.
The way you talk about it,
I'm not a past life person, but guys, when I tell you the story, you're going to wonder if there's a past life. In the 1930s, exactly as Olga said. Okay, friends, if you want more Olga Lautman, and I think we all do, you need to go to Olga's Substack if you're not there already, or because you're going to be on with Ken Harbaugh in 6 minutes to talk more about this stuff. We all love Ken Harbaugh. He is an American hero in so many ways, goes to Ukraine all the time, to the front lines to bring them aid. He's a phenomenal person. If you don't subscribe to Ken Harbaugh's Substack, you should. But more importantly, for the purposes of this discussion, go watch Olga and Ken at noon right now in 6 minutes on their Substacks. And in the meantime, Olga and I will be back next week. And it's great to see everybody.
And read your stuff because you have some very good geopolitical stuff that people really need to know and connect the dots. I mean, you really connect the dots globally, not just, focusing on one event. And there's not too many people because sadly, media just focuses on one event. They don't go through connecting the dots. So definitely, and please write that piece about Iran and what is happening.
I'm going to. I think
that we need that.
I'm going to go do that while you do Ken's show. And friends, it's fine. Go read a little royal gossip. It's good for the soul. Have a little schadenfreude about Harry and Meghan crawling back to Britain after MFing them for 6 years. But in addition to that, watch Olga and Ken because this stuff really will impact your life a lot more than, whether Prince Harry chooses to live in Santa Barbara or decides to move back to the UK. Okay, great to see you. Olga, have a great show with Ken. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.